Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. When I turned into my driveway after 3 weeks in Europe, I expected comfort. The old oak gate, the brass plate that read Ethan Cole, the sound of my dog barking from the porch. Instead, silence. My gate stood bare, 2 lonely screw holes where my name had once gleamed. The house looked wrong. New curtains, white walls instead of my soft gray. And on the porch stood my father, smiling like a man pretending not to drown. Beside him, my sister Ivy leaned against a new Tesla, the metallic blue glinting in the sun. "You're back early," Dad said, voice tight. I stared past him, my chest heavy. "New color," I murmured. My color wasn't that. Ivy twirled her car keys with a smirk. "Bad news, genius. You don't live here anymore." I blinked, slow and calm. "What?" Dad's smile broke. "We sold the house," he said quickly. "Needed the money to pay your sister's debts." The words struck like cold iron. I could barely breathe. "You sold my home?" "You were gone too long," Dad said. "It was the right thing to do." Ivy's laugh cut the air. "You're always preaching family first. Guess we listen." For a moment, I thought I'd collapse. Years of sacrifice, all for them, reduced to a transaction. But I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just looked at them both and smiled faintly. That smile frightened Ivy. "What's so funny?" she snapped. "Nothing," I said softly. "Just realizing how poetic betrayal looks in daylight." She frowned. Dad shifted uncomfortably. They thought they'd won, but the truth, they hadn't even begun to lose. What they didn't know was that the house they'd sold wasn't mine to lose at all. That night, I sat in my car across the street, staring at the house that used to be mine. Through the glowing windows, I saw their silhouettes, my father pouring wine, Ivy laughing, the Tesla parked like a trophy beside them. My chest ached so hard I pressed my palm against it. I'd bought that car for her birthday once. I paid off her first debt too, foolishly thinking love could fix irresponsibility. It began 6 months ago, the night Ivy showed up crying over another failed investment. Dad wrapped her in his arms and said softly, "She just needs a second chance, Ethan." I replied, "She's had a dozen, Dad, and each one cost me a little more of myself." He glared, "Family helps family." Those words became the shield and my prison. Weeks later, I noticed strange entries in my bank portal, access logs from my lawyer's office, letters I never received. I brushed it off until I found it. A folded envelope, unsigned, detailing a power of attorney filed under my name, my signature carefully forged, mocking me. I sat for hours, staring at that imitation of my hand, tears burning my eyes. It wasn't just fraud, it was betrayal carved into ink. I didn't confront them, not yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go. I learned who they met, when they whispered, what they planned. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. The night I discovered the forged signature, something inside me broke, quietly, cleanly. But from that silence came a strange clarity. If they wanted to play deceit, I would master it better than them. I started by creating a holding company, Cole Holdings Ode, registered under a name no one would trace back to me. Every property I owned, including my house, was moved there. On paper, it was simple restructuring. In truth, it was protection. Then came the harder part, the decoy. Behind my home, I owned a small adjoining plot, bought years ago when I dreamed of building a studio for my photography. It stood empty, unnoticed, until now. I hired a private team paid in cash and rebuilt my home, every wall, every window, every imperfection. Even the balcony railing I dented as a child was copied. When I saw it finished, my throat tightened. It looked like my memories had been cloned. I remember whispering to the empty air, "They took my trust. I'll take their certainty." The legal description of the new property differed by only one letter. To an untrained eye, the documents looked identical, but in the registry, it was a completely different parcel of land. When Ivy's debts began suffocating her again, and Dad started making desperate calls, I didn't stop them. I let them think they still controlled me, because betrayal thrives on blindness, and I had given them just enough darkness to destroy themselves. When I boarded the plane to Europe, they believed I was escaping. But I wasn't running, I was waiting for their greed to take the bait that would seal their fate forever. The day I returned from Europe, everything was already in motion. The house they had sold was never mine to lose. It belonged to my company, wrapped in legal layers they'd never understand. Yet as I stood there watching my father's forced smile and Ivy's arrogance, I felt something deeper than anger. It was grief, the kind that burns quietly like ashes that never cool. Dad stepped forward. "We got a great deal, Ethan." Cash in hand, the buyer seemed eager. "I know," I said calmly. "I recommended him." Ivy blinked, confused. "You what?" I reached into my coat and pulled out the papers, stamped, sealed, cold as justice. "He works for me, my development firm." Her smirk faltered. She snatched the papers and skimmed them. Color drained from her face. This says the title was transferred 2 years ago." "That's right," I said quietly. "The property you sold doesn't exist. The sale was fraudulent. The money you took, already flagged for investigation." Then my father lunged forward, shouting, "You think you can destroy your own family?" "I'm not destroying it," I said quietly. "You did that the moment you sold what wasn't yours." "I think you both said enough," I told them, placing my phone on the table. A recording played, their voices cold and clear. My father detailing how to forge my signature. "He'll lose everything. Let him cry." My sister laughing about finally being free of Ethan's rules. "He deserves it." For a moment, silence filled the room. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Only the wind answered. I turned to leave. The police will handle the rest. I'd loved them once, too much perhaps, but love without respect is just captivity. I thought justice would feel like victory, but what came next would test my heart more than betrayal ever could. The police arrived minutes later. Blue lights flashed against the wet pavement. My father's outrage turned to panic as the officers cuffed him. My sister tried to cry her way out of it, but the words forgery and fraud ended her act. I didn't feel triumph, only the heavy stillness of truth catching up. When the last patrol car disappeared, I walked to the narrow gate beside the drive. Beyond it stood the real house, the one they never knew existed, protected under my holding company. The air smelled faintly of rain and cedar as I stepped inside. My mother's photo still watched from the mantel, her smile calm, forgiving. I sank into the armchair she once loved. The house hummed softly around me, untouched, unbroken. Justice had come, not with vengeance, but with quiet truth. Outside, the rain washed the night clean, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.